They were both calm when the episode died. That's the part nobody ever believes until they hear it. This is the file Joe told me to erase, the one his lawyer said never existed. It was recorded in a studio that millions recognize on sight, but this version never made it to Spotify. You're about to hear why. Alright, we're live, Joe said, voice warm, that familiar grin audible even if you weren't looking at him. Today's guest is someone the internet has a lot of opinions about. Markle is here. We're gonna talk fame, narratives, whatever else comes up. Megan, thanks for coming. Let's be clear, she replied, adjusting the headphones so they sat perfectly on her hair. I'm not here for opinions. I'm here for accuracy. She didn't laugh. Joe did, softly. That's fair, he said. People think they know you. I don't. I just see headlines. So let's start simple. What do you think people get the most wrong about you? That I owe them a version of me they recognize, she said. As if I'm a character in their show. I watched the waveform jump on the monitor. Her voice was smooth, controlled, like someone who'd practiced every sentence until it stopped feeling like speech and became architecture. Joe leaned into his mic. You do a lot of sit-downs, documentaries, big interviews. To some people, that looks like you, kinda living inside the spotlight. You don't think you participate in the character thing at all? I participate in survival, she said. If you're talking, they're deciding who you are. So either I curate or I get curated. Men get called strategic for that. Women get called manipulative. He nodded. I get that. But I think people tune in here because they want the messy middle. The not curated parts. The human thing. The human thing is that I choose what I share, she said sharply. That's a boundary, not a performance. The air in the control room shifted. I've sat through fighters cursing, comedians crying, scientists forgetting they're being recorded. This felt different. Not louder. Thicker. Joe rolled his shoulders. Easy. Totally. Let's talk about that boundary. You talk a lot about mental health, resilience. People listening right now are under their own kind of pressure. What does taking care of yourself look like on a Tuesday when no cameras are around? She gave a tiny laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Joe, that's the problem right there. You think privacy is just an aesthetic without cameras. It's not content you haven't monetized yet. I'm not asking you to monetize it, he said. I'm asking what helps you stay okay. Meditation, therapy, prayer, screaming in the car, whatever. You want to practice, she said. A 3-step morning routine so people can copy and paste it into their chaos. I don't brand my healing. I live it. That's not what he started. Isn't it? She cut in. When a woman talks about pain, it becomes a trend. A hashtag. A style of breakdown. I'm not giving you that. For a second, he let the silence sit. In audio, silence isn't empty. It's like turning the lights off in a crowded room and waiting to see who moves first. I'm not trying to make you a trend, he said. I'm honestly trying to give you space to be more than a headline. People are gonna dissect this conversation either way. I'd rather they dissect something real. Real to whom? She asked. You? Your audience? Real to the tabloids that will cut this into 6 clips and decide which one is acceptable? I glanced at the chat feed running on a muted monitor. Even though this was a recorded episode, the internal team chat was already alive with predictions. Clips. Memes. Fire. Joe took a breath. I could see through the glass. Okay, let's get concrete. You've said before you left a toxic environment. The royal stuff, the press. Totally understand wanting out. But you moved into another machine, Netflix, podcasts, big platforms. Do you ever worry you rebuilt the same spotlight, just with your name on the switch? Her jaw flexed, just once. Do you ever worry that you've built a career out of asking people to bleed in front of you and calling it authenticity? She fired back. The waveform spiked hard. That's a strong way to put it, he said, still even. I think of it as curiosity. People sit down, they tell their stories. Nobody's here against their will. Informed consent isn't just sitting in a chair, she replied. It's understanding how your words will be chopped, captioned, turned into content. You've built an empire on those edits. Don't pretend you're neutral. In the booth, my hands hovered over the sliders, as if I could turn down tension like volume. Joe smiled, but his eyes had narrowed a fraction. We post 3-hour conversations. The internet chops them, not me. You built the arena, she said calmly. You sell the tickets. Saying you're not responsible for the fight because you didn't throw the first punch is convenient. For a moment, they just looked at each other, two brands in human skin. Then Joe did something I'd heard him do with fighters and presidents and fringe scientists. He decided to go personal. All right, he said. Let me ask you something I ask a lot of guests. When's the last time you were wrong about yourself? Her lips parted, just a little, like that question had grazed something private. Then the gate slammed shut. Wrong, she repeated. I've been misrepresented. I've been lied about. I've been flattened. But wrong about myself? No. I know who I am, whether anyone else does or not. Everyone's wrong about themselves sometimes, he said quietly. Me included. That's kind of how growth works. Spoken like a man who gets apologies baked into his career arc, she said. Women like me don't get redos. We get receipts. At that word, a chill slid down my back. Because I knew something Joe didn't. Her team had emailed 2 hours before the show. They wanted a copy of the raw audio within 24 hours, for archival purposes. Legal had said it was fine. Now, hearing her say receipts, I suddenly understood that request differently. Okay, Joe said, still steady. You brought up receipts. Let's talk about that. There's a clip of you. Do you want to talk about my clips, Joe? She said softly. Or yours? He hesitated, just enough for the camera to catch it. I mean, we can talk about my stuff too, he said. I've had people mad at me for guests I've had on, stuff I've said. It's all out there. That's the beauty for you, she said. It's stuff. For me, it's evidence. For every woman watching, every woman who's been called difficult because she didn't smile through disrespect, this is evidence. She looked straight into the main camera. Not at him. At them. At everyone who'd already decided who was the villain here. Evidence of what? Joe asked, following her gaze. That I asked you questions? That you think asking is innocent, she said. That you think access to a woman's interior life is a right with a mic attached. Hold on, he said, palms open. I'm not asking you to strip emotionally on camera. I'm asking how you see the world. That's what this show is. People see the world differently. We compare notes. And yet, she said, every time I decline to hand over a piece of myself, you frame it as avoidance, not self-respect. He shook his head. I haven't said you're avoiding anything. You don't have to say it, she replied. You just keep circling the same questions, like a shark deciding where to bite. I saw his jaw flex this time. All right, he said. Here's me not circling. Just landing. Some people think you're incredibly controlled, to the point where they feel like they're talking to a brand, not a person. Do you think there's any truth to that? He let the words hang between them like a dare. Megan's smile appeared, slow and bright and utterly joyless. I think some people mistake a woman who won't perform her wounds for them as a brand, she said. And I think that makes them very uncomfortable. Are you uncomfortable? He asked. No, she answered. You are. I checked the time code. We were just past the halfway mark. This was usually where conversations with prickly guests started to loosen, where jokes slipped in, where some shared humanity bubbled up. Not this time. Look, Joe said, voice dropping into that lower, more serious register he used when shit got real. I respect your boundaries. I respect what you've been through. I'm not your enemy. I invited you here because longform is one of the few places left where people can be messy and not get cut down to one version of themselves. And yet, she said, you keep trying to convince me that messy equals honest. Maybe my honesty is my control. Maybe my boundary is my truth. Or, he said carefully, maybe your boundary is your armor, and you're so used to needing it that you don't know what it feels like to put it down for an hour. That was the moment. The one I knew, right then, would either make this the most watched episode of all time or the one nobody ever heard. Megan blinked once. Twice. Something sharp flashed through her eyes. You know what's funny, she said at last. You talk like this is neutral ground. Like I walked into a vacuum. But before I got here, your team sent me a rundown of your style. The Joe experience. Joe frowned. We don't send rundowns. She smiled without warmth. No, but they do send patterns. Links. Guests who cried, guests who broke, guests who changed their mind live on air. You curate your own mythology. The guy who gets people to open up. That's your brand. And you came in here expecting me to play my part in your story. That's not true, he said evenly. Is it? She countered. Because here's the thing you didn't know. She reached down, under the table, fingers elegant and precise. When her hand came back up, there was a small, black device between her thumb and forefinger. A separate recorder. In the booth, my stomach dropped. I started recording the moment I walked into the building, she said softly. Lobby, hallway, pre-chat. The jokes. The don't worry, we'll take care of you. The little comments about how this will humanize me. All of it. Joe stared at the device. For the first time, the comm cracked just a little. Why? He asked. Because, she said, I'm tired of being the only one on record. That's paranoid, he said. That's experience, she replied. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips on the console. You know this is a one-party consent state, right? He said. Legally, you can record. I'm not worried about that. I know you're not worried about the law, she said. You're worried about context. That's the thing you've always controlled. He shook his head slowly. No, I'm worried that you walked in here assuming bad faith, and then you'll use anything I say to prove you are right. You walked in here assuming my resistance is ego, she said. I walked in assuming your access is hunger. Maybe we were both right. The room felt smaller. The time felt shorter. Okay, he said finally. Let me be as clear as I can, for you and for everyone who will definitely clip this to death. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to understand. That's it. If you don't want to be understood, that's your right. But why come here at all? She looked at him for a long moment, then past him, to the camera again. Because, she said, people like you hate the most when a woman sits down in your arena and refuses to perform the script you wrote for her. I wanted them to see that. I wanted them to see you trying to peel me open, and I wanted them to see me say no. You think saying no on my show is revolutionary? He asked quietly. I think saying no and not being edited into a yes is, she answered. I felt the hair on my arms rise. Because in that moment, I knew there was no cut that would save him and no cut that would destroy her. This wasn't about clips anymore. It was about ownership. We were deep in the final stretch now. Rihanna would have called it the where the replay button gets heavy part. For me, it was the point where I watched two people realize the conversation had already left our hands. All right, Joe said. Last thing. And I mean that. You say you don't owe anyone vulnerability. I agree. Nobody does. But you also say you want to model something for women watching. Strength, boundaries, survival. Do you ever worry that what you're modeling is a kind of isolation? Like, trust no one. Share nothing, everyone's out to take from you? Her gaze softened for the first time. Just a little. Then hardened again. I worry, she said slowly, that if I show you the part of me that still trusts, you'll sell it back to me with ads. I worry that every soft spot I show will become a weapon in someone else's recap. So no. I'm not modeling isolation. I'm modeling refusal. There's a difference. He nodded, almost sadly. And I think, he said, you're mistaking resistance for strength. The silence after that line was so clean you could have cut glass with it. He didn't follow it with a joke. She didn't follow it with a counterpunch. They just sat there, two people who had finally found the sentence that could not be walked back. In the booth, my producer looked at me, eyebrows raised. Joe glanced at the main camera, then back at Megan. You know what, he said quietly. Cut the feed. I hesitated. I'd never heard him say that in the middle of a taping. Joe, you sure? I asked through his headphones. Yeah, he said, eyes still on her. We're done. I hit the switch. The red on-air light went dark. The waveform froze. For a moment, nobody moved. No one breathed. Megan slowly took off her headphones, folded them with care, and set them on the table. You'll regret that, she said softly. He gave half a smile, nothing like the podcast grin the world knows. Maybe, he said. Or maybe not everything has to be content. She held up the little black recorder, its tiny red light still burning. Oh, Joe, she said. You still think you get to decide what is and isn't content. Then she stood, smoothed her blazer, and walked out past the glass, not even glancing at me. The door closed with a soft click. Later, his lawyer would call. My boss would say erase it. The file would get moved, renamed, buried under aliases. Officially, the episode never happened. And yet, you're hearing it. Not because Joe lost, or because Megan won, or because the internet deserves another fight in their feed. You're hearing it because that day in the dark studio, with the neon humming and the skulls watching from the shelves, I realized something I can't unknow. Every real conversation you hear was edited by someone. This one was edited by me the moment I decided not to press delete.